Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Game Hub. I'm your host Gamer K, and it's the month of October, which means all month long, it's Villain Month in the Game Hub. Every single video this month will be villain specific. So, whereas my favorite villains, least favorite villains, and at the end of the month, I will be doing a Halloween themed video because, well, I can't really do a October month without doing something Halloween. And as you can see, all my artwork depicted some of my favorite villains, from Scarecrow, from the Arkham series, Oogie Boogie, Shigaraki, and we're going to take the camera for once to give a different view of some of my artwork. A signed Oswald Cobblepot print of from Gotham. If you haven't watched Gotham, it's over, but it's a really great show. You got a Green Goblin print here, which it's very chibi-ish, but it looks so cool. Venom. Very, very nice Venom print. I'm holding it by the edge so it doesn't screw up with the camera. Alright, let's get down to the business in hand. Let's get to the business. So, from my shirt, you can probably guessing, I love villains. That's what this whole month is going to be about. Whether they're clever, monstrous, or just downright down to the bone evil, villains are the best thing in any type of story because they're always the main problem of the story. And what better way to start off a villain month than with the very first villains to ever hit mainstream media? And no, I'm not talking about horror movies, monster movies. I'm talking about Disney in general. So, it's time for GamerK's top 13 Disney and Pixar villains. I'm keeping them in close because technically they're not the same thing. Although they did work with Pixar many times, I want to make sure it gets stuck out there. So, again, these will be my list. This is my list. My personal opinion about these villains. What makes them a great villain? And, yeah, just in general, each villain will be ranked, well, not ranked, but you know what I mean. I have very specific reasons why I chose these particular villains for this list, and for what gets them higher or lower on the list. Now, for about 3 of these villains, there will be spoilers for their certain movie. So, with that spoiler announced, so if you... Alright, guess you haven't left yet, so let's get down to business. Coming in at number 13, I'm very close-minded when it comes to new Disney movies or Pixar movies. I mean, I always have doubts if it's going to be as good as the ones I love, but I'll definitely dip my hat in the ring to see if it's good. And one of the movies I really enjoyed last year, Coco. I saw the trailer, I saw some of the reviews, and I'm thinking, okay, this is just going to be a Book of Life knockoff. And then I watched the movie, and it turns out, yeah, Book of Life should have been a ripoff of this. Because this does the Day of the Dead thing way better than Book of Life ever did. And also, the villain. Once again, Pixar went again with another big reveal villain. And whereas they've gotten better at doing them ever since... Oh my god, I've lost track right now. Never meet your heroes, ladies and gentlemen. That's the basis for this villain. Ernesto de la Cruz. Throughout the movie, he's been mentioned a lot. He's Miguel's idol, his role model, and the most famous celebrity in their town. And in general. Watching his tragic death in the beginning really made me think, this is why you don't go big for performances. That's why. And then after that reveal in the beginning that Ernesto is his great, so many great grandfather, it really starts to make you touch that this man who he's idolized was was a relative of his. So that really made the journey to get his blessing all the more important. And then you get to the mid part of the movie where Hector confronts Ernesto about stealing his songs and becoming famous off of them. Now, this kind of thing I kind of expected. I kind of figured, he was a disgruntled partner, didn't really get his fair share or was just ripped off. But then it gets better. As we see in a snapshot where a film was made of Ernesto's life, Hector starts to remember a point where he wanted to leave and go see his family, but Ernesto needed his music. So he poisoned him, killed him, and took the songs. That alone is without a doubt one of the most underhanded things. A lot of the villains on this list have done something that's worse than this, but this is just a step off on top of the list. And not only that, after Miguel finds out the truth about all this, Ernesto doesn't give him his blessing and keeps him there. So no one can say that he's been a fraud all these years. And not only that, but at the final climax of the movie, Ernesto shows his true colors, like what he's willing to do to keep his fame in the afterlife. And it was such an amazing twist that I barely saw coming. And oh boy, as for how he got defeated, well, let's just say karma has a habit of coming back to bite ya. Coming at number 12, this, I kind of saw this coming, but not in a way I fully expected for number 12. I didn't expect to like Big Hero 6 that much. I didn't expect to see it. I went to go see it with my girlfriend in theaters because we're Disney fans, and it was a new movie, so I figured why not. It looked really, really good, and it's one of the few Disney movies that have made me cry. Okay, yeah, that's not true. I cried a lot during certain Disney movies, but this is the first one to really hit on a real subject of losing someone so at kind of a young age and dealing with the depression. But let's skip all that sappy stuff and get right to the villain here. I half expected it to be for fame or for something like that. Kind of like with Hector and Ernesto and Coco. I was half expecting it to be something like what happened with Doc Ock in the new Spider-Man game. Kind of revenge for being left out of a project and the other person getting all the fame. But no, it was a straight up revenge story, and I love it. Yokai, aka Professor Callahan, definitely saw him coming being the reveal villain a little bit. But the motive behind it was amazing. While I'm not sure. It's never said if it's months or years ago that this happened. But he worked with XIII, who was a billionaire tycoon, who was a technological guy. Callahan's daughter was a pilot that was testing an experiment in order to cross dimensions, in order to, like, an instant teleport machine. So a subway goes through the portal, comes out the other side in, like, an instant. There was a glitch, something happened, and Callahan's daughter was lost in the different dimension. Too bad the trap card returned from the different dimension wouldn't work here. So Callahan hated XIII for what happened to his daughter. So I think that's another reason why I think he enjoyed being at the university's high technological area, so he can look for something to get back at XIII. And that's when the microbots came in. After the explosion, Callahan took the microbots and devised his plan to destroy XIII's reputation and XIII himself afterwards. This is one of the few Disney villains that I sympathize with. Because it just shows when something tragic happens to you, you never really know what you're going to go through for it. And Callahan definitely went through heck. And he just wanted to get some revenge. And the moment where he confronts Cray gets my spine going, because it's a really cool villain versus the person who wronged you conflict. It's done very well. And they do something like this in the series. I haven't finished the series. It's really well done. And they included Callahan in one episode, and oh my, it just shows how well they done the character that they were to do, so much so in the series as well. So if Big Hero 6 ever has a sequel, which they kind of already did in Kingdom Hearts 3, I will look happily to see Callahan's the villain I'm going to measure up the new threat to. So I hope they don't do anything cliche. Coming in at number 11. I am sorry, Dave. I cannot do that. Who knew they could put HAL 9000 into a Disney movie, to a Pixar movie, and make it work? Otto, ladies and gentlemen, from WALL-E. Now, Otto's a different kind of villain. He doesn't have an evil plan. He's just following his directive. Kind of like Vicky from iRobot. She doesn't see what she's doing as evil. She sees it going to extremes in order to maintain her directive. And Otto is a definite improvement over that villain. So the whole colony of the XIII is because Earth wasn't safe enough for human inhabitants. So they got on the ship and they were on that for like 700 years, something like that. All the while, even everyone's been getting, for lack of a better word, unhealthy. And oh boy, they're starting to look like the Russian dolls, except they don't open up and have a smaller version of themselves. But the reason I like Otto is because even though he's the villain of the movie, he doesn't see himself as a villain. He just sees himself as doing what he's told to do. And it goes even farther with showing that, even with giving the evidence that there is still a little bit of life on Earth, Otto doesn't care. He just sees it as irrelevant that on the XIII they will survive. And that's when the captain says that he doesn't want to survive. He wants to live. And finally stepping up for himself for all these years, finally realizing that technically the entire ship is a villain, if you think about it. Because it keeps everyone doing the same thing, not realizing the real threat that happened on Earth. So, and yeah, Otto goes to definite extremes to keep his mission. So, yeah, HAL 9000 as a Pixar villain. Good job. You deserve an award for that. Coming in at number 10. Oh, boy. Okay, I'm going to say this. When I first watched Wreck-It Ralph, the villain plot just went over my head. I didn't see it coming. I mean, I saw the villain, but I didn't see how how in-depth it was. King Candy, a.k.a. Turbo. This is how you do an amazing video game villain. Oh my, just his design alone and his obsession. So basically, this villain is a good contrast to what Wreck-It Ralph is. Because, okay, so basic backstory, Turbo was the star of his own really old racing game, where it was like low-res graphics where you just race around in a circle, and he was the main character. So you would obviously play him every single time, so he would always win usually. And then when a new racing game that was better came in, Turbo got really envious. So he abandoned his game, crashed the other game, and put them both out of commission. But what I think happened was that Turbo, before it was unplugged, Turbo got out of the game and he lied in wait for a new racing game to appear. Enter Sugar Rush, which I think is a definite collaboration of Mario Kart and Candy Crush. Just gonna say. And then after disguising himself as King Candy, he goes into the game's code and rips out Vanellope's programming, so he's the top dog, and prevents her from racing at all costs by entrapping all the citizens and the racers' memories so he can have a great game to be his own. What makes it even better is near the end of the level, near the end of the movie, where he's eaten by the cybugs from Hero's Duty. Okay, stop snickering. He becomes the ultimate virus. And before Wreck-It Ralph saves the day, he says, "Welcome to the boss level." How cool would this have been in Kingdom Hearts 3, ladies and gentlemen? All honesty. But yeah, this just shows, I mean, it reveals Turbo to be who he is. A corruptor who doesn't care he doesn't care about anyone else. All he wants is to be the main focus. And seeing him fight Ralph for a little bit, using his new cybug parts, it's a very cool way of having a boss fight in a movie and making it seem like it would fit in an actual legitimate video game. That's one thing I love about the character. Not only that, but his reveal during the race, after Vanellope starts glitching and he gets caught corrupted in it, he just goes to show that he doesn't care about any other program. Because if you think about it, this is a good contrast. I mean, it's a good contrast with him and Wreck-It Ralph in many ways. Ralph was the villain of the game. I mean, the game was called Fix-It Felix, but Ralph was the villain, and he just felt underappreciated because, yeah, he does the same thing day after day. And, I mean, and during the movie, it shows that without Ralph, the game doesn't really work. Because there's nothing if nothing's wrecked, there's nothing to fix. So I think that's when the people in the game realize that he is important, and they undervalued him. Turbo, on the other hand, was the hero, but he got jealous of other games. So kind of like Turbo, Ralph went out of his game in order to get a medal so he could feel good about himself. Turbo just wanted to be the main focus. So I think this game kind of shows two different sides of a story. Turbo, who was the hero, but he became the villain, and Ralph, who was the villain, who ended up becoming the hero. So, yeah, if Kingdom Hearts ever decides to do a new game, please have Sugar Rush or the arcade be a level. Please. Be really fun to fight King Candy. Please. Do it. Boy, I'm really behind on this list. Come in. Number 9. A very underrated Disney villain, in my opinion. A complimentary to Sherlock Holmes and Professor Moriarty, there's Basil of Baker Street and Ratigan. Ratigan is one of my... He's not a big villain. He's not mentioned as much. But I think he's an amazing villain. For the main purpose is, during his reveal, he is the counter opposite to Basil, being a sadistic, evil genius. And during his villain song, it's shown that he likes the finer things in life, because his hideout is very, very sparkly, very high-end, high class. And then during one scene when one of his guys gets drunk on the wine, he calls him a rat. I mean, we all know he's a rat, but to Ratigan, that's an insult. Enough so to have his pet cat eat the mouse. An evil rat has a pet cat. There was some thought put into this movie. You can just tell. In Ratigan's mind, being called a rat is dirty. It's disgusting. It's animalistic. It's not sophisticated. Because if you think about it, he's the only rat. Whereas all the other main high-end characters are mice. Because mice and rats are very, very different. Mice are supposed to be the high-end versions, and rats are the disgusting underneath. So for Ratigan to be this high class, I think it's to hide his own insecurity about being a rat. And even the confrontation with Basil, it goes... I mean, his main plan was to kidnap the Mouse Queen of England and have a robot say that he's being introduced into high society, or he's going to rule, something like that. But it goes south very quick in the end. And the confrontation between him and Basil on Big Ben is by far one of the creepiest scenes I've ever seen in a Disney movie. Especially when I was a kid, because I still remember that. As the clock starts to ding and Ratigan starts to realize that he's losing to Basil, he can't take it anymore. And as he's running up the clock tower, his clothes start to get caught in the gears. They start to rip, starts to tear, and his rat animalistic instincts kick in. So he removes the high society figure he claimed himself to be and instead reveals this monstrous rat and attacks Basil. It's very good. This was a very clever idea, having the sophisticated become the animal in the end. It's kind of like in Beauty and the Beast, where Gaston was the macho man, ladies' man, become the real monster of the story. Outside of the beautiful, there is an ugly inside, and that's where Ratigan gets I mean, Gaston was going to be on this list, but I put Ratigan up here mainly because the confrontation between him and Basil is far superior between Beast and Gaston. So, basically, yeah. He is the world's greatest criminal mind, and also his death scene, falling off Big Ben. That's scary as a human. Imagine how terrifying it is for a rat. A lot scarier. Does Disney have a thing for pushing villains to their death? What is with Disney's fascination with defenestration? Seriously, like, let's see, 1, 2... Yeah, a good number of Disney villains tend to die from falling. Maybe stay off high areas, guys. Coming in at number 8, Clayton from Tarzan. Clayton was obviously going to be the villain. No issue there. But it's just how evil he can be. Because I think what makes Clayton a really cool villain is the perception of man. Because Tarzan spent most of his life in the jungle. And also, kind of like the memes, how is it he's been in the jungle for so long and he's still clean shaven? And he learns English from an English woman, and yet he has an American accent. How? But because he's only been around humans, like these humans, he doesn't know the evil that man has to do. I mean, the only evil he really ever fought was Sabor. And I guess he never really figured humans could be as savage as an animal. But having gotten on the boat, Clayton definitely shows his true colors. That he's going to hunt the gorillas for a reward, for riches. And it's one of the most terrifying scenes in the entire movie, if you ask me. However, Clayton goes to so far to try to hurt anyone who gets in his way. I mean, like most villains, but Clayton does so with a gun. And I think it's one of the few Disney villains who actually... His death may be the most gruesome ever, but I'll get to that in a second. In the confrontation, Tarzan gets him into the treetops, starts using his jungle instincts to his advantage, getting the gun from Clayton, pointing it at his neck, threatening him. And Clayton taunts him by saying, "Go ahead, shoot me. Be a man." And Tarzan does the gun sound effect in order to terrify Clayton, to scare him. And these cool words still resonate with me. Not a man like you. This is a good point. Most men, this was after he shot Kerchak, which was basically Tarzan's father. Anyone else would have definitely ended Clayton. But Tarzan took the high ground, showing that he's not a man like Clayton. He's not a savage. He's not a monster. And then he tangles him up in the vines incidentally, like to restrain him, to prevent him from attacking himself. And then Clayton starts chopping the vines frantically, getting a vine stuck under his neck. And then after he cuts the last support, yeah. And not only that, but after the lightning hits, we see a silhouette of his hanging body. Like I said, this is the most gruesome and most visually disturbing death in Disney history. I'm very surprised this death got on to the final cut. But I gotta admit, it was a cool thing to show kids. Not a cool thing to show kids, but it's basically a kind of way of maturing them a little bit, so they know that death definitely happens, and we see it. So Clayton, maybe you should have stuck to dealing with other wild animals and not man. Coming in at number 7. This villain was fun for me. One of my favorite new villains from, I believe, 10 years ago. He's got friends on the other side. Unfortunately, when you owe a debt to your friends, they're not going to help you for long. Dr. Facilier from Princess and the Frog definitely gets higher on the list above these other villains for the mere fact of how he operates. And also his villain song is just... perfect. It's just the movements, the colors... And voiced by Keith David. You can't love that voice, ladies and gentlemen. You just can't. I mean, Goliath is... No, wait, not Goliath? I can't remember the main character from Gargoyles, but Keith David voiced him as well. Hearing that voice as a villain definitely makes this character really interesting. But his main plan is money. Basically money. So he uses the Prince Naveen and his servant in order to achieve his plans. I mean, yeah, he has his voodoo magic from the other side, but as he demonstrates it when he puts on the necklace that Lawrence tossed, even though he can conjure up the voodoo stuff, he can't do anything for himself. So, in practical words, that's like saying, I can print all this money, but I myself can't use any of it. It's something like that, basically. So he can conjure up all this magic and all these trinkets, but they don't work for him. Because he's the one who made the deal, he can't use them. So that's why Dr. Facilier needed puppets to work for him. Basically, Lawrence. Playing off his insecurities of wanting to be higher up than the people who order him around. And the Shadow Man and Facilier is a great villain because unlike other villains on this list, he uses his silver tongue to get to manipulate a good bunch of people. I mean, he manipulated Lawrence into helping him by playing off his insecurity. And near the end of the movie, he tries to get Tiana to give him back the talisman in order for Okay, back to his plan before I continue. His main plan was to use the trinket with the prince's blood, have Lawrence marry the blonde nitwit, can't really remember her name, and have her and after marriage kill her father, voiced by John Goodman for some reason or another. Kill him, and then get access to all the money. And then afterwards, he gives all the people to the other side for soul eating. Not really 100% sure. So he makes another deal with them. This is kind of a double-edged sword with the Facilier. His silver tongue can get everything he wants, but what happens afterwards? I'm saying that because when the prince got away, he needed to go back to the spirits and ask for more help. And at first they're reluctant to help him, and then he sweetens the deal by saying, "What's in it for you?" saying that they can have all the souls they want after the plan succeeds. And after hearing this, they are excited. They send out the shadows to help him. And this is where it's a double-edged sword. I'm going to get to that once I talk about his ability to sweet talk his way. He uses his magic to show Tiana what could happen. Her in her lavish new restaurant. Everyone's there. It's everything she ever dreamed. All she needs to do is give him the talisman. And he constantly talks to her about the ones who said negative about her, all the friends, all the free time she had to sacrifice, all those who think because of her background that she can't do it. This is a villain that knows how to play on what they want. And then in the end, it shows that Facilier is nothing on his own. For the main fact is, after Tiana breaks the talisman, deal's off. The spirits come to take him because they've had enough of his false promises, and they're not going to give him another chance. And in an awesome, creepy reprise of Friends on the Other Side, in a graveyard among all places, the spirits take his soul. And as they're doing it, as the song is going, he's constantly begging and pleading, telling him that he has more ideas, that they can still do business. He tries to bargain his way out of this, but it doesn't end up paying off. That just shows, don't take more than you can give. Because sooner or later, no one's going to help you for free. Everything comes at a cost. Man, I've been talking about 13 through 7 for a long time. This may be my longest video. Perfect. Continuing with number 6, Pixar villains are coming back onto the list. Syndrome from The Incredibles. Another representation of super... This and Big Hero 6 are the only original superhero idea movies that have ever come out, and they're done very well. They emphasize the superhero culture. They emphasize what it's like in a comic book, kind of, but without using Batman or Spider-Man or any of the others. They completely created their own. And Syndrome is a great villain, a character who once idolized the main hero, and then something happens, and that hate, and it quickly turns to hate. So Syndrome was basically the kid from the beginning who wanted to be the sidekick. I mean, and that's rare for a good number of characters. They don't want to be the sidekick. They want to be the hero. But after an event happened and Mr. Incredible snubbed him, he was done with heroes. So he decides to use his technological genius to give weapons to villains or anyone else who's willing to pay. Because during the first confrontation, it's true what Syndrome said. that people want respect and power, and they will pay through the nose to get it. I mean, obviously, he kept the best weapons for himself, because what's the point in having the best weapons if you give them away? That means you're powerless. And Syndrome knows this. So his big plan, I gotta admit, this is really, it's kind of ingenious. He got the older heroes to his island in order to test his the Kronos machine, the Kronos robot. And I gotta admit, the scene where Mr. Incredible finds the database and he is looking up the heroes and all the Kronos Mach 1, Mach 2, it just shows how many heroes Syndrome has killed in order to make this perfect machine. It starts to stick with you, too, now that you think about it. Like, with every single edition, and some of them get beaten by the heroes, he makes improvements. And then he kills them. Like, I think he's got the highest murder rate in the Disney Pixar pool. He's got the highest kill count, if I'm thinking about it. Not only that, but he goes to great lengths to make sure that no one interferes with him, even a child. I mean, also, I would have put him lower on the list if basically his plan is to become the only hero who can destroy the Kronos and get fame. And then after he's thwarted, he tries to steal Jack. Yeah, that doesn't go so well. Take it from Edna Mode, ladies and gentlemen. No capes. Because that's what happens. Coming in at number 5, my favorite Pixar villain. Coming in from a very, very young age, Pixar movies were starting out, and this villain is higher on the list because for a lot of these villains that I like, they don't have the muscle, they don't have the brawn, they have the brain. Actually, you know what? Yeah, every single villain on my list basically is intelligent. None of them are dim-witted. None of them are savages. Hopper from Bug's Life is a definite reminder of know your enemy and you will know yourself. And not only that, but Kevin Spacey's voice in this character definitely brings like a high-end, not like a mobster, more like a, kind of like his role in 21, where he's sophisticated and yet he's intimidating with his manner, with his demeanor. Hopper is the leader of a gang of grasshoppers, and they bully the ants to give them food and for protection. And it's not until Flick accidentally screws up and all the food goes down the hill into the water, and Hopper shows himself to the ants demanding their food. And he starts to explain how there's a twisted circle of life. And near the beginning of the movie, like when the grasshoppers first attend, is one of my favorite scenes because it shows Hopper's biggest fear, outside of birds, obviously. When he's bringing Dot to see Thumper, the crazy grasshopper, Flick stands up to him. And this surprises him because I don't think an ant has ever stood up to Hopper in the many years that they've been doing this deal, or however long the deal's been going. And Hopper is stunned by this. And Hopper's higher on the list because of his motivation and his ability to keep the ants in line. But he's not so high up because he's not that much in the movie, which sucks. Hopper understands the biggest threat of the ants. And it's not until back at their hideout near the end of the movie where he where his boys don't want to go because it's not like they need the food. And Hopper definitely doesn't like that he's being challenged on this. But he plays it very cool, very comical, like saying that, yeah, one ant, what's the big deal, right? Because his boys are commenting on this, like, one ant stood up to you, big deal, what's the point, what's the problem? So Hopper throws a small piece of, now to a grasshopper, grain is pretty much like, let's say about this big, pretty much. So he throws it at his guys, asking, is it hurt? They chuckily say no, and everyone's laughing. You know, all the other grasshoppers are chuckling it up. He throws another one, doesn't really hurt. He rips the dispenser off, and hundreds of grains collapse on the guys, crushing them to death. You just saw a cold-blooded murder, ladies and gentlemen. And that's when Hopper spells it out. You let one stand up to you, then they'll all stand up. Hopper realized the problem with the ants and the threat they pose to him, because they outnumber the grasshoppers in bigger numbers than ever. And if the ants figure it out, there goes the grasshopper's advantage. So I was very curious about that when I was a kid. Like, why don't the ants just stand up? Because the grasshoppers are bullying them. They're threatening them and saying that they're worthless. Because that kind of psychological torment stays with them. And it stays for generations because they fear the grasshoppers. And Hopper knowing that throughout the entire film and the story, it just shows that what a calculating guy he is. And that it's not about getting free food. It's about keeping people in line. That's why I love Hopper so much. Because, yes, he's kind of a mob guy. A little bit of a mobster. He's a gang leader. He's tough. But he shows his intelligence so well in this movie. And that's why I love him. If it wasn't for a little bird and their hungry chicks, he would have been back next summer. Coming in at number 4. Okay. It's sad he's not on the shirt. When I talk about early Disney movies, when I talk about dark Disney movies, when I talk about dark themes, what movie comes to mind? If you're thinking, if the setting is Paris, if the theme is definitely not for kids, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame. One of the darkest villains in Disney history, and I doubt we'll ever get darker than Claude Frollo. We will never get a more evil villain. It's a remake on a classic story, and he's not a priest in this version, but I think that works to its advantage, him not being a priest. So he's a man who's all about being very religious, keeping things in order the way he sees it. And we basically see him murder a woman in the beginning because she was a gypsy. She was trying to be safe. And then he outlandishly tries to kill the child because it's deformed. Luckily, a deacon stops him, and because he's very religious, he sees the statues of the church, and he's terrified. The moral of the story is, who is the monster and who is the man? So, yeah, he raised Quasimodo from a child and kept telling him that the world would hate him for his ugliness. That the only one he can trust is him. I'm going to say this, another one coming soon on the list is going to be a villain who did the exact same thing, but in a different type of way. So bear with me. Frollo, during the Festival of Fools, Frollo gets a demonstration of the Esmeralda, of the Gypsy Esmeralda's, lack for a better word, exotic performance. Yeah, definitely not for kids, ladies and gentlemen. But it is for kids, so as long as they don't know, they have some in-jokes for the adults. Frollo definitely shows his colors during his villain song, Hellfire. Because it's not a... what's great about it is it's not a song where he's singing about how evil it is or his plans. It's just how he's become infatuated with Esmeralda, and he's caught between his religious devotion and his desire. Okay, so we have envy, we have greed, we have lust. Is Disney going through the 7 deadly sins? Because if so, I guess Otto is sloth. Ernesto de la Cruz is pride. Oh my God, Disney is doing the sins. Well, can't wait to see what gluttony is going to be. But back to my point. The song is one of the best villain songs to date, mostly because it's a song about his tormented soul being caught between desire and devotion. And damn, if the song didn't creep us out as a kid, it definitely creeped us out as a kid. No kid watching this scene did not have any questions about what the heck was going on during it. Oh my God. So yeah, basically he wants Esmeralda for himself. It even shows before the song when he corners her in the church, when he grabs her from behind and sniffs her hair. Yeah, Frollo's definitely one of the creepiest villains ever. Not as creepy as Kamoshida or Dr. Bumby from Madness Returns. Yeah, these guys should deserve their own list. Watch Mojo. If you're ever doing a top 10 creepiest villains, there, I put three mentions on there for you. Go do it. But it gets worse after the song because people who are hiding gypsies are being arrested, and even people who aren't hiding gypsies, he burns in a house just to make sure. He's willing to do anything he can in order to find Esmeralda. And even when he gets her, oh boy, it is definitely one of the creepiest villain moments in Disney history. He tells her, either burn at the stake or be mine. Well, that's a bit of an ultimatum. Oh my God. I want to talk about him so much more, but I have my top 3 to do. So, yeah, Frollo, driven by desire, hindered by his religious devotion, and in the end, the wicked did plunge into the fiery pit. You did. Well, you sung about hellfire, so I guess you got what you asked for. Coming on number 3, right front and center, ladies and gentlemen, Scar. Definitely another one of my favorite villains, is a classic villain. And, oh boy, Scar definitely... Did I like what they did with him in the new Lion Guard series? Somewhat. I mean, they definitely screwed around with the backstory, but whatever. But Scar is definitely up there, mostly because of how far he goes with his plan. To become king and take over your brother's spot is one thing. Coordinating with hyenas in order to achieve said goal, that's another thing. Having a kick-ass song, that puts you near the top, my friend. Be prepared, such a great song, and it's definitely one of my favorites to date. But his plan goes even further. I mean, yeah, he set Simba and Mufasa to die. However, Mufasa saved Simba, so plan B needed to go. He threw his own brother into a stampede, which obviously killed him. And then to guarantee there was no one in his way, he basically lied. He tells Simba it was his fault because of what happened, and told him to run. Killing your brother is one thing in order to assert control. I mean, it's based on Hamlet, so of course. But then telling your young nephew that you're the reason this happened, what is everyone gonna think, and told him to run and never come back, that's diabolical. And then having the hyenas chase him in order to kill him, so there's no loose ends. And now that you think about it, he had control of the Pride Lands for what would have been like maybe a good couple years, because he did grow up because of the Hakuna Matata sequence. Don't play the song! Good. The entire thing, like maybe 1 or 2 years, I'm guessing, because I don't think it was months. But yeah, Scar... Yeah, we don't see Scar that much during the second half of the movie, which is weird. Huh. But the final confrontation is where the villain gets very devious. Where once again he starts to imply that Simba murdered Mufasa, it was his fault, and then for some reason he tells Simba that he did it. Don't know why you did that, you idiot. That's literally like saying he did it. That's like saying in court while you're on trial, he murdered the person. Oh, by the way, I secretly killed them, but yeah, we're putting all the blame on him, so don't just ignore what I said. Wait. Why would you do that? And then after the battle on top of Pride Rock, Simba corners him, and then Scar gets more treacherous by blaming the hyenas, that he was a victim of the hyenas. Much like Dr. Facilier, his mouth gets him in trouble. Because after being pushed off Pride Rock in a spectacular kick motion, Scar's not dead yet. And then the hyenas come, and they heard what he threw them under the bus. So it's feasting time. So we had hanging and being eaten alive, ladies and gentlemen. Classic days of Disney are going away, and I kind of want them back. Okay, I had to do a lot of thinking for the number 2 spot. This villain gets on here because of how evil this villain is. And it's not just the schemes in the movie. It's the schemes it's the scheme overall in the whole movie, not just certain parts of the movie. Now, I had to do a lot of thinking over every character's motives, just everything in general. And give props to the only Disney villain to make my list. And she deserves it. Mother Gothel from Tangled. Yeah, she outbeat a revenge-seeking supervillain, HAL 9000, a criminal mastermind rodent, a poacher, a voodoo guy, a supervillain, a psychological insect, a lustful religious man, and a murdering megalomaniac. She beat out all of them for a good number of reasons. Like I said with Frollo, she as well. So, Mother Gothel found the magic flower in the beginning of the movie and was using its power to keep herself youthful. And it isn't until the Queen of Corona is ill, so they need the flower's healing magic, which they find it, grind it into a soup, which in turn inputs the power into the child at the time, Rapunzel giving her long, her long lustrous hell, all without Maybelline or L'Oreal. What, you think I wasn't going to make a hair product joke? I mean, come on. And that's when Mother Gothel sneaks in, tries to snag a piece of the hair. Although, what's the main phrase? Man plans and God laughs. Yeah, it turns out cutting Rapunzel's hair gets rid of the magic and has that little bit turned brown, short and brown. So Mother Gothel had no choice but to kidnap the child. Bringing her to the tower that's far in the forest, she raises Rapunzel and tells her that the outside world is a dangerous place. Now, Frollo does the exact same thing, but it's more for a selfish reason that Mother Gothel does it, because she uses the magic to keep her young. But she does it in a way where Rapunzel doesn't catch on. She teaches Rapunzel the song that keeps her hair glowing, that makes her hair glow and heal. But she doesn't know the full extent because Mother Gothel's with her when she does it, so she can... I think the hair works for maybe a good number of days before you need to do it again. So, and her villain song is okay. The reprisal is a little better because it's bringing out her evil tone, but her main plan doesn't happen until the end of the movie, which is great. So, unlike Frollo for saying the outside world is a dangerous place, Frollo didn't want... It's not that Frollo didn't want Quasimodo outside. He just didn't want people to know about him. Mother Gothel, on the other hand, wanted Rapunzel to stay locked up so she could have her all to herself and remove the risk of her finding out her true parentage, who her real parents are, and discover the world. So she has to stay in the tower to be reliant on Mother Gothel. And that's where the creep factor gets to it. Near the end of the movie, she tricks Rapunzel into thinking that Flynn left with the tiara, that he didn't really care about her, so she would come home with her. And then after she finds the truth, she locks up Rapunzel and stabs Flynn. Her death is by far one of my favorites because it was an act of self-love from Flynn to Rapunzel. He didn't care if he was healed or not. He just removed Mother Gothel's ability to keep the restraints on Rapunzel by cutting her hair, making sure that no one can use her like that ever again. And with that gone, Mother Gothel, a quick fast forward is done on Mother Gothel as she starts to turn really old and shriveled and basically, again, fall to her death. Well, I guess her death is basically old age. What gets her the number two spot is simple. Think about this. The problem with the movies is that we don't really get a timeline, basically. I mean, we do technically in Tangled, because from birth to the main part of the movie, Rapunzel is 18 years old. So think about that. For 18 years, Mother Gothel has stayed the same age. She's kept her youth. And think about this. How long from the first time she found the flower to when the king and queen used it to make the queen feel better? How long has Mother Gothel been using the flower? How long has she been using the power? We don't know. So she could have been alive for decades more, if you include the 18 years. Her villainous, her ability to be a villain is just her selfishness. The fact that she needs the flower to stay youthful for her own sake. It's not a part of some evil scheme to take over anything. She just wants to stay alive forever and ever. That's all she wants. She doesn't care who she hurts as long as she gets what she wants. Much like other villains on the list, but she does it more by kidnapping a child and keeping her locked up for her own evil purposes. And that's what makes her a fantastic villain. And I guess the worst death for someone who wants to be young forever is to die old. I guess it was karma. All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for my number one pick. Although my number one pick is definitely my absolute favorite Disney villain. Hey, how you doing? Hades, Lord of the Dead, how you doing? Hades, definitely my favorite villain. And it's a shame he's only on the corner of my shirt. The reason I love Hades so much is because he's not like the other villains. He's somewhat monstrous. Very rarely is he seen doing anything evil because he's biding his time before he takes over Olympus. Although he does do a lot of stuff that is worse than all the other villains combined. Even Mother Gothel, for God's sakes. Even though they do kind of the same thing. He wants to take over Olympus because he's sick and tired of being in the underworld. So he asks the fates what's in store for him. Sadly, his nephew... Okay, seriously, is having a nephew detrimental to your health in Disney? Because this is the second one where a uncle does something to the nephew. Come on. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. So, he has Pain and Panic make the kid mortal and kill him. So, unfortunately, doesn't go that well, and he's still strong, but he's still mortal. Isn't until 18 years later that Hades figures it out. What I love about Hades is his design. Is that he's not dark. I mean, he's not gloomy or monstrous like, the God of the Dead should be. He's witty. He's clever. He's fun. And James Woods voicing him, absolute perfection. He sounds like a sleazy used car salesman. And that's what I love about him. His fast-paced talking, his little mannerisms that he uses. All the little, not jokes, but comments that he uses throughout the game. Like, everyone has a weakness. What was it, Pandora, the box thing, and, the Trojans, they kind of bet on the wrong horse. All those little jokes that he does... And the fact that he's the originator of the thing, what are those? And then pointing to someone's shoes. Yeah. It's very comical. And I love how his big thing is that he likes to make deals with people. And he sticks to his word, even near the end when he makes the deal with Hercules in order to give up his strength. Just watching him throughout the movie is... It's a thrill to watch, just watching Hades in general. And I think it goes a little bit deeper because like Mother Gothel, 18 years is a big thing for this, for both of them. So what was he doing for those 18 years? I mean, I guess we have Hercules the series to thank for that, which, I'm okay with it. I'm just glad that in the series James Woods praises his role for Hades, and also in Kingdom Hearts. It wouldn't have been the same without him. He even makes clever little quips in the game, which I love it. James Woods is perfect. One thing I also want to mention, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's out of 6. He's 7 villains who don't have a villain song on this. Which, honestly, I don't mind. Don't really need a villain song from Hades. One thing I also want to point out, when he talks about what happened with Meg, why she doesn't trust men that often, and why she's with Hades, that she sold his soul to her, she sold her soul to him to save her boyfriend's life, and then he walks away with a dame. Then he walks away with a new dame, and Meg's heartbroken, and she's stuck with Hades. I'm willing to bet, I mean, it's never revealed or even talked about again. I'm willing to bet that Hades manipulated those events so that Meg would have to be with him, like, work with him. Yeah, how much you want to bet that's what happened? After he saved her boyfriend, he manipulated events so that a new woman would be in his life, and Meg would be heartbroken. How much you want to bet? Yeah, I mean, that's what I like about Hades again. I mean, even though no matter what happens, he always makes sure his part of the deal is almost guaranteed. And Meg knew this throughout in the movie when he made the deal with Hercules. You know, you give up your strength for, let's say, the next 24 hours. Meg's safe, as always. And then that little loophole, fine. She's safe, you know, if not, you get your strength right back. You know, fine details, fine print. Let's just shake on it. Meg knew the extra detail in that deal. And after that deal was made, he went to go free the Titans. And while the main four were heading to Olympus, he made the Cyclops go destroy Thebes. Knowing Hercules wouldn't sit down and let innocent people get hurt, he knew Hercules would go in a fight even though he didn't have the strength. So he was betting on Hercules dying. And Hades is the kind of guy, when he makes a bet, he makes doubly sure he's going to get his outcome, the outcome he wants in the deal. And Meg, knowing this, she throws herself in danger. She got hurt. He got his strength back. And deal's broken, you know, yada, yada, yada. So, basically for being a schemer, for basically having a plan set in motion years in advance and trying to guarantee that your outcome is what he wanted, that's what gets Hades at the top of the list. Not just because I love his design, his quips, but it's usually it's half the time when it comes to building a villain, you think of the character and then you think of the personality. For Hades, so, like I'm trying to say, half the time it's the villain, it's the character that drives the personality, but in Hades' case, it's the personality that drives the character. And that's something that a lot of these villains do have, but Hades has it in spades, and that's what gets him on the top of my list. Man, this is definitely the longest video I've ever done, but a lot of explanation. I'm getting more detailed. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of this video. Like, comment, subscribe down below. Coming next week, we are leaving the magical world of Disney and getting into the anime section of villains. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me next week when the top 13 anime villains invade the Game Hub. This is Gamer K, logging out.